The crystal chandelier cast long shadows across the untouched five-course meal. Isla Wolf sat alone at the head of a table meant for 20, her fingertips tracing the rim of a champagne flute that had long gone flat. Another dinner alone. Another night when Julian's empire came first. The mansion's silence felt suffocating, a gilded cage that had slowly closed around her over 10 years of marriage. She'd sacrificed her law career, her independence, her voice. For what? The staff had been dismissed hours ago, leaving her in perfect isolation. Her phone buzzed with his perfunctory text, "Emergency board meeting. Don't wait up." She didn't respond. Instead, she rose with quiet determination, her silk dress whispering against the marble floor as she walked to Julian's study. The biometric lock recognized her fingerprint, a privilege he'd soon regret granting her. Inside the mahogany sanctuary, she opened the hidden wall safe and withdrew a thick folder marked "Confidential." Years of collecting evidence, of turning a blind eye, of pretending not to see the darkness beneath his success. It ended tonight. Upstairs, she packed a small suitcase. Just essentials. She looked at the wedding portrait on her dresser. His charming public smile so different from the cold, calculating eyes that watched her at home. With trembling fingers, she removed her wedding ring and placed it beside the photograph. By morning, the papers would be ready. By morning, she would be free. Or so she thought. The future isn't something that happens to us, it's something we create. Julian Wolf's voice boomed through the convention center as 5,000 people hung on his every word. On stage, the 43-year-old tech visionary commanded attention in his trademark black turtleneck and blazer. A calculated image of innovative simplicity. Wolf Tech had revolutionized military-grade surveillance software, making Julian the darling of Wall Street and Washington alike. The crowd erupted in applause as he unveiled the company's latest security platform. Cameras flashed. Stock prices soared. No one saw the tension in his jaw when his assistant whispered in his ear, "Sir, your wife's lawyer called again." Backstage, Julian's public warmth vanished instantly. He dismissed his entourage with a cold glare and locked himself in his private suite. His phone displayed a text from Victor Maddox, his mentor and the silent power behind Wolf Tech's government contracts. Problem. Julian's fingers tightened around the device. Divorce wasn't just personal failure. It was an existential threat to everything he'd built. Isla knew too much. Had access to too much. No one left Julian Wolf's life without his permission. He crawled from poverty, built his empire through brutal determination and decisions others were too weak to make. A wife with evidence of illegal military sales wasn't a complication he could afford. Not when the IPO was weeks away. Not when billions were at stake. The Wolf Mansion's breakfast nook offered a panoramic view of the Pacific, but neither occupant admired the sunrise painting the waves gold. Isla placed the manila envelope on the marble countertop and slid it toward her husband without a word. She'd rehearsed speeches, prepared for shouting, for negotiation, for threats. Instead, there was only the quiet clink of Julian's espresso cup returning to its saucer. He didn't open the envelope. He didn't need to. His eyes, those striking blue eyes that had once made her heart race, studied her with clinical detachment, as if she were a disappointing investment about to be liquidated. The silence stretched between them, heavy with a decade of unspoken grievances. "I've had my lawyer draft fair terms," Isla finally said, her voice steadier than she'd expected. "I don't want to battle, Julian. I just want out." Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps that she'd found the courage. Then his lips curved into that meteorite smile that never reached his eyes. "Of course, darling," he replied, his voice smooth as mercury and just as toxic. "If that's what you want." He reached for her hand across the table, a gesture that might have seemed loving to an observer. But Isla felt the warning in his grip, saw the calculation behind his calm. "I only want what's best for both of us," he added, releasing her. The divorce papers remained unopened as he stood to leave. "I have meetings all day. We'll discuss this tonight." Later, Isla would remember that moment, his unnatural calm, his retreating back, the papers left untouched as the moment she should have run. The law offices of Green and Associates occupied the entire 42nd floor of a downtown high-rise. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered vertigo-inducing views, but Isla's focus remained on Catherine Green, the city's most formidable divorce attorney. "He won't react well when he realizes what you have," Catherine warned, reviewing the encrypted files on Isla's laptop. The evidence was damning. Offshore accounts routing funds to sanctioned countries, software backdoors sold to dictators, voice recordings of Julian discussing bribes to defense officials. Isla had been collecting it all methodically for 3 years, insurance she'd hoped never to use. "Julian doesn't lose," Isla explained, her voice hollow. "Not in business, not in marriage. But I can't keep pretending I don't see what he's doing, who he's becoming." Catherine nodded, understanding the weight of what her client was undertaking. "We'll need to move quickly. Once we file, I want you somewhere safe, a location he doesn't know about." Isla twisted her hands in her lap. "There's my son to consider. I won't leave without him." Adam was 16 now, already showing his father's brilliance, but Isla prayed, not his ruthlessness. "Julian controls everything," she continued. "Our home, our finances, our lives. This divorce isn't just about splitting assets. It's about surviving him." As she spoke, her phone buzzed with a text from Julian. "Dinner at home tonight. Don't make plans." Not a request, a command. She'd spent 10 years obeying such commands. Tonight would be different. Tonight would be the beginning of her escape. The private dining room at Le Cirque hummed with exclusive energy as Lena Vale signaled for another martini. At 32, she still turned heads. Her calculated beauty a weapon she'd wielded since her modeling days. She checked her Cartier watch. Julian was late again. Their arrangement had been convenient for 2 years, discretion, luxury, and mutual benefit. She entertained his ego, he funded her lifestyle and tech startup. But lately, things had changed. The payments had become investments with strings attached. His visits carried an edge of control rather than desire. Worse, she'd overheard a conversation last month. Julian discussing military software being sold to countries under embargo. Dangerous information that made her both valuable and vulnerable. The maitre d' approached with a note. Meeting canceled. Return home. J. No apology, no explanation. Just another command from a man who'd forgotten she wasn't one of his employees. She downed her martini in one swallow. Enough. She'd been saving the recordings, the documents he'd carelessly left visible. Not blackmail, she told herself, protection. Her phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. "Ms. Vale, I represent Isla Wolf. We should talk." Lena stared at the screen, ice forming in her veins. Julian's wife knew. The game had new players now. She typed back, "Name your time and place." The response came instantly, "Tomorrow. Noon. The Botanical Garden." As Lena signed the check, she didn't notice the man in the corner taking her picture, evidence being gathered for a frame that was already under construction. Victor Maddox's estate sprawled across 20 acres of prime coastal property. A fortress disguised as a mansion. At 70, Victor remained the power broker behind a dozen industries. The man who made kings but wore no crown himself. Julian's helicopter landed on the private pad as the sun began to set. Victor waited on the terrace, silver hair gleaming in the fading light. a glass of scotch in his gnarled hand. No pleasantries were exchanged as Julian took the seat across from his mentor. "She's filing for divorce," Julian stated flatly. "And she is evidence that could destroy us both." Victor's weathered face betrayed nothing as he sipped his scotch. "Women come and go," he replied, his voice like gravel. "Empires remain. Unless someone is foolish enough to give a wife access to their kingdom's secrets." The rebuke stung, but Julian didn't flinch. "I need a solution, Victor. Not a lecture." The older man studied him. This protege he'd molded from raw, hungry talent into a billionaire. A silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant crash of waves against the cliffs below. Finally, Victor leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "She doesn't have to die. She just has to disappear." Julian's pulse quickened. "Explain." Victor's plan unfolded with the precision of a man who had eliminated problems before. "Frame Isla for a murder so perfectly executed that no evidence, no money, no power could free her. A crime that would destroy her credibility, her freedom, and any threat she posed all at once." "Who's the victim?" Julian asked. Victor's thin lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The mistress, of course. Poetic, don't you think?" The presidential suite at the Archer Hotel had been reserved under Isla's name, with her credit card on file. Details Julian had arranged with practiced efficiency. Security cameras would capture Lena Vale entering the elevator at 8:47 p.m. She would never be seen leaving. Julian arrived first, wearing gloves, his movements precise as he prepared the room. Champagne on ice. Glasses with Isla's fingerprints collected from home. The statuette, a bronze Artemis that had been Isla's anniversary gift, positioned near the sofa. The sedative in the left champagne flute measured to incapacitate but not kill. His burner phone buzzed. Lena was in the lobby. Perfect. He positioned himself behind the door and waited. Heart steady, mind clear. This was just another business transaction. Another competitor to eliminate. The keycard swiped. The door opened. "Julian," Lena called, stepping inside. He emerged with a practiced smile. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." She relaxed slightly, accepting the champagne he offered. "Your text said it was urgent. Something about Isla knowing?" She took a long sip, her eyes never leaving his. "Does she?" Julian moved to the window, maintaining distance. "Let's just say adjustments to our arrangement are necessary." He watched her blink heavily, the drug taking effect. "You're not leaving her, are you?" Lena asked, her words beginning to slur. He didn't answer, simply waited as the glass slipped from her fingers. As she collapsed onto the sofa, he reached for the bronze statuette. One clean strike. No hesitation. No witnesses. No loose ends. Monday afternoons meant pickup duty at Westridge Academy. Isla waited in the carpool lane, sunglasses shielding her eyes from more than just the autumn sun. 3 days since she'd filed the papers. 3 nights of Julian acting unnervingly normal, as if her declaration of independence was merely a passing inconvenience. She checked her watch, 3:15. Adam would be out any minute. Then they would drive straight to the apartment she'd secretly leased, the first step in their new life. The school doors burst open, teenagers flooding out in waves of chatter and backpacks. She spotted Adam's tall frame, so like his father's, moving toward her. She waved. He didn't wave back. Instead, his eyes widened in alarm, fixed on something behind her. Before she could turn, the car doors were wrenched open. "Isla Wolf, you're under arrest for the murder of Lena Vale." The words made no sense. Strong hands pulled her from the driver's seat, spinning her against the car. Handcuffs bit into her wrists. "You have the right to remain silent." She couldn't process the Miranda rights being recited. Couldn't focus on anything except Adam's face. shock and confusion giving way to something worse. Doubt. Cameras appeared from nowhere, local news, already on the scene. Too quickly, as if tipped off. Through the chaos, she glimpsed Julian's black sedan pulling up. He emerged, face a perfect mask of distress, rushing toward Adam and pulling him close. "I didn't know," he called to the reporters, voice breaking with practiced emotion. "I had no idea who she really was." Adam looked between his parents, torn between the mother in handcuffs and the father offering protection. Julian's eyes met Isla's over their son's head, cold, triumphant. Message received, checkmate. The media frenzy erupted with calculated precision. Tech billionaire's wife arrested, Ian lover's murder, screamed the headlines. Isla's face. Her mugshot juxtaposed with glamour shots from charity galas plastered every news site. Julian's PR machine worked overtime, crafting the narrative with surgical precision. He appeared on morning shows, voice grave with rehearsed concern. "I'm still in shock. The Isla I thought I knew would never." Carefully placed pauses. A hand trembling just enough to suggest genuine emotion. By week's end, the internet had rendered its verdict. #murderwife trended worldwide. Online sleuths dissected every aspect of Isla's life, finding evidence of instability that had never existed. Her charitable foundation board members resigned en masse. Friends stopped taking her lawyers' calls. Her carefully built life dissolved into toxic speculation. Meanwhile, Julian established the Lena Vale Foundation for Women in Technology, pledging $50 million while wiping away camera-ready tears. "Something positive must come from this tragedy," he told Anderson Cooper, Adam stoically by his side. Bail was denied. The prosecution cited flight risk, pointing to Isla's recently leased apartment and packed suitcase as evidence of planned escape after the crime of passion. The DA, who'd attended Julian's fundraisers for years, promised swift justice. Catherine Green remained Isla's only visitor, bringing updates more grim with each passing week. "They have your DNA, your fingerprints, hotel security footage of someone matching your description," she explained through the prison phone. "The prosecution has a mountain of evidence." What she didn't say aloud, every piece of it manufactured. Every witness compromised. Every judge potentially in Julian's pocket. Cell Block D housed 38 women in various stages of legal limbo. Isla became the 39th, her designer clothes exchanged for an orange jumpsuit, her privacy reduced to a toilet without a door. In the prison hierarchy, she occupied a strange position. A billionaire's wife who supposedly killed his mistress made her simultaneously celebrity and pariah. They watched her, these women with their own stories of injustice and bad choices. Waited for her breakdown, her protests of innocence, her tears. They received nothing. Isla spoke only when directly addressed by guards. She ate mechanically, slept lightly, and watched everything. The cameras in the corners. The guards who paid special attention to her cell. The woman 3 doors down who asked too many questions. Survival required silence, a lesson she'd actually learned in her marriage. So she withdrew into herself, building inner walls where physical escape was impossible. At night, when the lights dimmed, she whispered Adam's name like a prayer. Her son hadn't responded to any of her letters. Julian would be poisoning him against her, using his confusion to sever their bond. The thought burned worse than any physical deprivation the prison imposed. During mandated yard time, she began counting steps, measuring distances, noting guard rotations. Not for escape, that was impossible, but because information was power, and she had been powerless for too long. In the shower room, where steam fogged cameras, she whispered to herself daily. Survive. Observe. Remember. Simple mantras that kept her sane as weeks turned into months and trial preparation dragged on with suspicious delays. The prison library smelled of disinfectant and old paper, a small sanctuary where Isla volunteered to spend her limited free hours reshelving books. 6 months into her pretrial detention, routine had become her armor. Head down, invisible, forgotten by the media that had once devoured her every move. She was returning a copy of Count of Monte Cristo to its shelf when a female guard she didn't recognize approached. Cleaning detail in the administrative wing, the guard announced loudly, though Isla had never been assigned such duty. Following silently through secure doorways, Isla noticed the guard's deliberate path avoiding cameras. In an empty office, the woman finally spoke normally. "We have exactly 3 minutes. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that you're not alone." She pressed a folded note into Isla's palm. "People know you didn't do it. The evidence is being gathered. Don't speak of this to anyone. Don't change your behavior. Silence is your shield now." Before Isla could respond, the woman continued, "You represented Marissa Chan 12 years ago. Pro bono. Domestic violence case. You saved her life. She hasn't forgotten." The name triggered a flood of memories. A terrified young woman, a powerful abusive husband, a court system stacked against her. One of Isla's first cases before Julian had convinced her to give up her career. "Trust is a luxury you can't afford," the guard whispered, checking her watch. "But know this, wheels are turning outside these walls." Later, alone in her cell, Isla unfolded the note under her thin blanket. The ghost drive activated. "He's not as careful as he thinks. Hold the line." The basement apartment in the university district offered perfect anonymity. Machen, Marissa's daughter and a brilliant computer science PhD candidate, had transformed the small space into a digital war room. Monitors displayed security feeds, court documents, and financial transactions. For 6 months, she'd been the invisible hand executing the contingency plan Isla had established years earlier, just in case. Mom's message got through. May confirmed to the small group gathered in her living room. Present were Catherine Green, Isla's former legal assistant James, and Dr. Femi Okafor, the medical examiner who'd been pressured to falsify Lena Vale's autopsy report. Catherine studied the screens. "Julian thinks he's untouchable. But he made a critical error. He didn't know about the dead man's switch. When Isla hadn't entered a specific code into a secure server for 30 consecutive days, encrypted files had automatically unlocked, sending alerts to this unlikely team of allies." James opened a hollowed-out copy of Crime and Punishment, extracting a custom flash drive. This was hidden in her office bookshelf. "I retrieved it the day after her arrest, before Julian's people could sweep the house." The drive contained years of insurance, Julian's shadow dealings meticulously documented, GPS data from his vehicles, voice-activated recordings from his home office, financial trails connecting Wolftech to sanctioned military operations. Dr. Okafor leaned forward. "The evidence against Isla is completely fabricated. The blunt force trauma pattern doesn't match the statuette they claim she used. Time of death was manipulated. I have my original unaltered findings." May's fingers flew across her keyboard. "The question isn't whether we can prove her innocence. It's how we dismantle him so completely that he can never hurt her again." The anonymous Reddit post appeared on a Tuesday, a simple link to an unlisted YouTube video. 23 seconds of audio. Julian's voice discussing how to handle Lena's growing liability. No context. No accusations. Just raw audio with verified metadata. By Wednesday morning, it had 1 million views. By Wednesday night, tech journalists were asking questions. Julian's PR team issued immediate denials. Deep-faked audio, politically motivated attack, full confidence in the legal proceedings against Ms. Wolf. But doubt had been planted. TikTok creators analyzed the audio patterns, comparing them to Julian's keynote speeches. Twitter erupted with conspiracy theories, some wildly inaccurate, others uncomfortably close to the truth. The Wolf tech stock dipped 3 points. Small tremors before the earthquake. From her cell, Isla noticed subtle shifts. Guards speaking in hushed tones about that Wolf case. A new lawyer joining her defense team, one she hadn't hired but Catherine vouched for. The prosecution requesting a delay in proceedings. Something was happening outside her concrete walls. During a legal visit, Catherine maintained their surveillance-conscious protocol, communicating critical information via handwritten notes immediately destroyed. Public opinion shifting. Key witness credibility questioned. Julian making mistakes under pressure. The next day, another leak, hotel security footage showing Julian entering the presidential suite hours before Lena Vale. The footage had been erased from police evidence, but recovered through a mysterious anonymous source. Major networks now covered the story with a new angle. Was Isla Wolf framed? Julian scheduled an emergency press conference, his first public appearance in weeks. On prison television, Isla watched her husband defend himself with slightly too much intensity, sweat visible despite professional makeup, a crack in the perfect facade. The WolfTech headquarters resembled a fortress as Julian's security team implemented enhanced protocols. 10 months since Isla's arrest, 3 months since the leaks began. The IPO had been indefinitely postponed. Government contracts were under review. Julian hadn't slept properly in weeks, his pristine life contaminated by whispers and suspicion. The trial was 2 weeks away, yet he maintained outward confidence. In the penthouse conference room, his legal team presented their final strategy. The evidence against Mrs. Wolf remains overwhelming, the lead attorney assured him. These online conspiracies won't affect the jury. They'll be sequestered and instructed to disregard media speculation. Julian nodded mechanically, his attention drawn to the glass wall overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, someone was systematically unraveling his carefully constructed trap. Someone with access to his private recordings, his movements, his communications. The door opened without a knock, only Victor dared such presumption. Everyone out, the older man commanded. The room cleared immediately. Victor's face was granite as he closed the door. The board is getting nervous, Julian. Stockholders are asking questions I can't answer. He poured himself a scotch without asking permission. You assured me this would be clean. Instead, you've created a spectacle. Julian's jaw tightened. It's under control. The trial... Victor cut him off with a sharp gesture. You should have killed her cleanly. Quick, tragic accident. Simple grief. Instead, you've created a martyr, and martyrs have followers. He drained his glass. Fix this. Permanently. Or I will. The threat hung between them as Victor departed, leaving Julian alone with the darkening skyline and the growing realization that his perfect plan was unraveling thread by thread. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Harriman entered day 1 of the State v. Isla Wolf finally underway after 14 months of delays. Media sketchers captured Isla's appearance. Thinner, paler, but composed in a conservative navy suit Catherine had brought. Julian sat directly behind the prosecution, Adam beside him, the boy now 18, his face a careful mask. The prosecution's opening statement painted Isla as a jealous wife who discovered her husband's affair and executed a calculated murder. The evidence will show premeditation, motive, and cold-blooded intent, the DA concluded confidently. Catherine's response was measured. The defense will demonstrate that Mrs. Wolfe was systematically framed by individuals with both the resources and motivation to orchestrate this elaborate deception. Witness testimony began with the hotel staff, the forensic technicians, all building the case against Isla piece by piece. Then came the prosecution's surprise. The state calls Victor Maddox. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Victor testified to Isla's increasingly erratic behavior in the months before the murder. Fabricated incidents delivered with convincing gravity. During cross-examination, Catherine asked just one question. Mr. Maddox, what was discussed during your meeting with Julian Wolfe on the evening of October 12th last year? Victor's pause was microscopic but telling. Business matters. Nothing relevant to this case. Catherine nodded, making a note. The day seemed to be proceeding according to the prosecution's plan until 3:17 p.m. when the courtroom doors opened. The bailiff approached the judge, whispering urgently. Judge Harriman's expression darkened. Court will recess until tomorrow morning, she announced abruptly. Outside, Catherine's associate whispered to Isla, it's happening. Anonymous witness has come forward with evidence. Judge is reviewing it now. The prosecution's case began collapsing with stunning speed. On day 3, the judge excluded the DNA evidence after defense experts demonstrated impossible contamination patterns. By day 5, the hotel security footage was ruled inadmissible due to unexplained gaps in the chain of custody. The prosecution grew increasingly desperate, witnesses stumbling under Catherine's precise cross-examination. On day 7 came the bombshell. A voice-distorted witness testified via closed circuit. I was paid to plant the murder weapon and subsequently alter the forensic reports. The courtroom erupted. Julian's face remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the bench. During recess, his legal team huddled in panicked conference. Something had gone catastrophically wrong with their airtight case. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, the parallel collapse continued. 3 WolfTech board members resigned citing personal reasons. A Pentagon official announced review of all contracts with the company. Financial journalists reported unusual stock movements suggesting insider trading. Victor Maddox hadn't been seen publicly since his testimony. The jury watched it all unfold with increasing skepticism toward the prosecution's claims. Adam stopped attending after the anonymous witness testimony. Julian's calls to his son went unanswered. By day 9, the DA requested a private meeting with the judge and defense counsel. Catherine returned with the offer, all charges dropped in exchange for Isla signing a non-disclosure agreement regarding the case. They're drowning and looking for a life raft, Catherine explained. Isla's response was immediate, no deals. I want complete exoneration on record. The message returned to the prosecution was simple, full acquittal or they would proceed with their defense, including all evidence of the frame-up and who orchestrated it. Camera flashes exploded like lightning as Isla emerged from the courthouse steps, officially a free woman after the judge's directed verdict of acquittal. The DA had withdrawn all charges that morning, citing insurmountable evidentiary issues. Reporters shouted questions, microphones thrust toward her face. She ignored them all, her eyes scanning the crowd until she found what she sought: Adam standing awkwardly by Catherine's car. 18 months of separation had changed him. He was taller, leaner, his face more defined. Less boy, more man. He'd missed her final year of childhood. That theft could never be recovered. She approached him slowly, uncertain of her welcome. The media parted, sensing the moment's gravity. Mom, he said simply, his voice deeper than she remembered. No running embrace from the child she'd left behind. But no rejection either. Just wary hope from a young man who'd lived with lies for too long. I wasn't sure you'd come, she replied, stopping just short of touching him. I've been sending letters, I only got them last month, he interrupted. After I moved out. Understanding passed between them. Julian had intercepted her letters, controlled the narrative until Adam's 18th birthday had given him independence. He told me you were guilty, that the evidence was overwhelming. Adam's eyes, so like his father's, searched her face. Then things started leaking online. I began asking questions he couldn't answer. Isla nodded, tears threatening but held back. Not here. Not with vultures watching. We have a lot to talk about, she said. Whenever you're ready. He nodded, the ghost of his childhood smile briefly visible. Together they walked past the media circus, neither looking back at the courthouse where Julian stood alone at the top of the steps, watching his son choose sides. Julian's private island in the Caribbean had once represented success. 50 acres of exclusive paradise. Now it was simply isolation. For months since the collapse of the case against Isla. 3 months since the SEC investigation began. 2 months since the board had forced him to step down temporarily. 1 month since Adam had legally changed his last name back to Isla's maiden name. The empire was crumbling brick by brick. His phone, one of the few connections to the mainland, chimed with his attorney's daily update. More bad news. 3 former government officials had accepted immunity deals to testify about Wolftecha's illegal software sales. Victor remained unreachable. His loyalty evaporated with Julian's invincibility. Former allies distanced themselves publicly. Current assets were frozen pending multiple investigations. The House staff had been reduced to a skeleton crew after his security team identified multiple individuals feeding information to outside sources. He poured another scotch, watching the sunset paint the water gold. The same view that had once filled him with satisfaction now mocked him with its indifference. His personal chef appeared silently to announce dinner was ready. Julian waved him away, appetite gone. The isolation was strategic. His lawyers advised staying out of U.S. jurisdiction while they negotiated with federal prosecutors. But strategic retreat felt uncomfortably like hiding. The great Julian Wolf reduced to watching his life's work disintegrate from afar. Later that night, checking financial news, he discovered Wolftech stock had fallen another 12 points. His phone chimed again, this time a text from an unknown number. The higher the rise, the harder the fall. He hurled the device against the wall, shattering the screen. They couldn't prove anything without access to his private servers. Could they? The courier arrived by private helicopter. Unusual for the island's isolated location. Julian signed for the package with reluctant curiosity. The red envelope bore no return address, just his name in elegant handwriting he instantly recognized. Inside was a single sheet of cream stationery, Isla's precise script unmistakable. This was never about freedom. It was about making sure you lived long enough to lose everything. Cold dread pooled in his stomach as he removed the second item, a birth certificate. Adam's birth certificate, but not the one in their family records. This document, officially stamped and notarized, showed Isla's maiden name as the mother and father listed as unknown. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. Adam had never been his biological son. For 18 years he'd raised another man's child, never suspecting, never questioning the timeline of Isla's pregnancy early in their relationship. The ultimate deception revealed at the moment of his greatest vulnerability. His hands trembled as he reached for his backup phone, dialing his lead attorney. "We need to talk about the trust," he demanded without preamble. Adam's trust. The uncomfortable silence on the other end confirmed his fears. "Mr. Wolf, Adam's legal team filed paperwork last week. with the DNA verification they submitted and your current legal complications. More silence. The trust has already been transferred to his control. $30 million, untouchable by current criminal investigations. Now in the hands of the boy he'd thought was his heir. And Isla had known all along that this day would come. Had planned for it from the beginning. Had ensured that even if Julian escaped prison, he would face this most personal betrayal. The phone slipped from his fingers as laughter bubbled up. Unhinged, desperate laughter at the perfect symmetry of her revenge. 1 year later, Isla stood at the living room window of her modest coastal home, watching Adam tend the garden they'd planted together. Rebuilding their relationship had been slow, careful work, trust growing like the fragile seedlings they nurtured in the salt air. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. WolfTech assets auction completed, victims compensation fund established. The final chapter of Julian's collapse. He'd ultimately accepted a plea deal. Reduced charges in exchange for cooperation against bigger players, including Victor Maddox. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms and ballrooms now occupied a minimum security prison cell in Colorado. The offshore accounts Isla had documented were seized. The government contracts canceled. The technology dismantled. The empire entirely undone. She set the phone aside, refusing to allow Julian's shadow any more space in her life. The doorbell rang. Catherine arriving for their weekly dinner, a friendship that had evolved beyond lawyer and client. "I brought wine," Catherine announced, embracing Isla. "And news, the foundation board approved all the grant proposals. We start funding domestic violence legal advocacy next month." The Isla Wolf Foundation, established with a portion of Adam's inheritance, represented everything she'd become in the aftermath. Stronger, purposeful, free. Later, as the small dinner party enjoyed dessert on the deck overlooking the ocean, Adam raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he offered. Isla smiled, adding softly, "and to the power of patience." The waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, a constant reminder that even the strongest walls eventually fall, not to violence, but to the persistent pressure of truth. Time and tide revealing what lies beneath. From her kitchen shelf, the single-framed quote caught the last light of day. "Living well is the best revenge." If you enjoyed this emotional journey of betrayal and justice, please like this video to support more original storytelling. Subscribe to the channel for weekly stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Share with friends who appreciate powerful revenge narratives. Comment below, what would you have done in Isla's position?